The room fell silent as little Sophia tilted her head toward the sound of music playing in the distance. Her nanny, Clara, froze, her heart pounding with realization. For years, Sophia's father had believed she was deaf, isolating her from the world. But in that moment, as the child tapped her foot to the melody, Clara knew the truth had been hidden all along. Clara had been hired by the wealthy businessman Richard Lawson to care for his only daughter. Richard was strict, emotionally distant, and buried in his empire of steel and glass towers. He insisted that Sophia was deaf, repeating it as fact, and never sought a second opinion. He believed her silence and distant gaze confirmed his assumption. But Clara saw more, something Richard refused to notice. Sophia was 5, with bright eyes that seemed to search for something no one offered her. Though she spoke no words, Clara noticed how she reacted to vibrations, shadows, and even the softest sounds. She would turn her head when birds chirped or when Clara whispered a lullaby at night. The nanny grew suspicious but kept silent, afraid of crossing the line with her powerful employer. One afternoon, Clara sat by the piano and began to play softly, just for herself. To her shock, Sophia approached and placed her tiny hands on the keys. She giggled, a sound Clara had never heard before, as if the notes carried her into a secret world. Clara's eyes filled with tears, realizing Sophia had been locked away in a prison of misdiagnosis and neglect. Clara tried to speak to Richard, gently explaining what she had witnessed. But Richard dismissed her with a wave of his hand, accusing her of wishful thinking. He claimed doctors had confirmed Sophia's deafness years ago. To him, any suggestion otherwise was an insult, a reminder that even his millions could not fix his daughter's condition. Pride, not love, blinded him. Refusing to give up, Clara began testing Sophia quietly. She would read stories aloud while pretending to look away, and Sophia's eyes would follow the words, her face lighting up with recognition. She whispered her name, and Sophia turned every time. Slowly, Clara uncovered the cruel truth. Sophia was not deaf, but she had been treated as though her voice did not matter. The nanny's heart ached as she imagined the years Sophia had spent trapped in silence, longing to be heard. It was not her ears that were closed, but her father's heart. Clara knew she needed undeniable proof to shatter Richard's stubbornness. So she hatched a plan, one that would leave him no choice but to face reality. During a lavish party Richard hosted for his business partners, Clara brought Sophia into the grand hall. Music filled the space, and the little girl's eyes widened. Clara encouraged her, whispering, "Go on." To everyone's astonishment, Sophia walked toward the orchestra and began clapping along, her rhythm perfect, her joy radiant. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Richard's face paled as his daughter swayed to the music. He tried to deny what he was seeing, but the evidence was undeniable. For the first time, Sophia turned directly to her father and mouthed, "Daddy." The word, though fragile, pierced him deeper than any business defeat ever could. The room fell silent, all eyes on the broken man who had ignored his own child. After the guests departed, Richard confronted Clara in his office. His voice shook with anger, shame, and confusion. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded. Clara's tears spilled as she replied, "I tried, but you wouldn't listen. You were too proud to see her truth. She needed your love, not your silence." Richard sat back, haunted by the realization that he had failed the one person who needed him most. For days, Richard avoided his daughter, guilt consuming him, but Clara urged him to be brave. "She doesn't need perfection, she needs her father," she said softly. Finally, Richard entered Sophia's room with trembling hands. He called her name, his voice breaking, and when she turned to him, he wept openly for the first time in years. Sophia reached for him, her small arms forgiving what his pride could not. Determined to make amends, Richard brought specialists who confirmed Clara's suspicion. Sophia was not deaf but had a mild auditory processing condition that made communication difficult. With therapy, patience, and encouragement, she could thrive. Richard felt both relief and shame, realizing he had wasted precious years believing in a lie. His millions had built empires, but he had neglected the greatest treasure of all, his daughter. The journey was not easy. Sophia struggled at first, her words hesitant, her confidence fragile. But with Clara's nurturing and Richard's newfound devotion, she blossomed. Her laughter filled the mansion, turning cold marble halls into a home. Richard discovered joy not in wealth but in reading bedtime stories, clapping at her progress, and listening, truly listening, to the sound of her voice. News spread among Richard's circle, but he no longer cared about whispers of scandal or weakness. Instead, he proudly introduced Sophia as his greatest success, not because of her abilities, but because she taught him the meaning of unconditional love. The man who once measured worth in profits now measured it in moments spent at his daughter's side. Clara remained by Sophia's side, not just as a nanny but as family. Richard often confessed to her, "You saved us both. You gave me back my daughter." Clara would smile humbly, replying, "No, she was always here. You just had to hear her." In truth, it was Sophia who saved them all, her innocence breaking through walls built by pride. Years later, Sophia stood on a stage at her school recital, her sweet voice carrying through the auditorium. Richard sat in the front row, tears streaming freely, his heart swelling with pride. The man who once ignored his daughter's truth now clapped the loudest, his applause echoing with redemption. Clara, sitting beside him, whispered, "You finally hear her." The cruel truth had been uncovered, but it no longer held power. Richard had chosen to rewrite the story with love, compassion, and humility. The mansion was no longer silent, it resonated with music, laughter, and the unshakable bond between father and daughter. Sophia's voice, once silenced by neglect, had become the anthem of healing. This story of a millionaire's daughter was not about riches or power but about listening, truly listening, to the people we love. Pride can blind, wealth can distract, but the heart always reveals the truth if we dare to hear it. Richard learned that love requires humility, patience, and presence more than anything money can buy. Clara continued to care for Sophia, watching as the little girl grew stronger every day. She knew her role had been to uncover the truth, but the real transformation came from a father's decision to change. Richard no longer ignored what mattered most. He had lost years, but he vowed never to waste another moment.